Now this is an interesting case from slot 1, CAT 2025. 5% case, right? Need to take your time and understand this clearly. And once you do that, it should become quite easy, right? So what do we have here? A train travels from station A to station E, okay, passing through stations B, C, and D in that order, right? So that's given A to B, and then to C, then to D, and then to E, okay. The train has a seating capacity of 200, okay. A ticket may be booked from any station to any other station ahead on the route, but not to any earlier station. That means from A I can go to B, C, D, or E. Okay, from B I can go to C, D, or E, but not to A, right? So only forward you can book. You can't book to yourself, doesn't make sense, right? By from B to B itself. A ticket from one station to another reserves one seat on every intermediate segment of the route. For example, a ticket from B to E, okay, reserves a seat in the intermediate segments B, C, C, D, and D, E. Okay, so B to E is going to be some number of tickets, right? 10 people are buying. So they're going to be traveling the BC segment, CD and DE, right? How else will you go from B to E? Okay, understood. The occupancy factor for a segment is the total number of seats reserved in the segment as a percentage of the seating capacity. Okay. The total number of seats reserved for any segment cannot exceed 200, right? 200 is the total. Okay. So occupancy factor is nothing but total number of seats reserved, right, in the segment. That is tickets which have been purchased and all of that. Tickets divided by 200 into 100%. This is for a segment, right? Segment occupancy factor, OF, of segment. You can take short notes for these, right? Always, it'll help. It won't be affecting it. Don't worry about it. Now we have some clues and what is eventually asked. Okay. We know that you can go from A to B, A to C and all. We might have to find the number of tickets. Exactly 40 tickets were booked from B to C. That gives me some idea about the structure. I need to form a table. Booking from B to C. I can have a from and a to, right? It's as simple as that. How many tickets were booked from station A to E? So we have two things over here. One is ticket booking and the other is a segment, right, which happens. If I book from A to E, I'm traveling all four segments, A, B, B, C, C, D, and D, E. It's as simple as that. Okay, so let's quickly form a table over here, something like this. And what are we going to have? We're going to have from A, you can go to these places. Now from A, I can't go to A itself, doesn't make sense. But from A, I can go to B, C, D, or E. I'm going to have some values here. From B, I can't go backwards or to B itself, the rest can be there. Likewise for C, the first three are blanks. For D, it's going to be the first four are blanks. And for E, what's going to happen? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Hey, what's happening here? From E, I can't go to E, right? Of course, from E cannot be there. You can't go backwards, right? So it doesn't really make sense to have that, but it's okay. Extra is always fine. Less is a problem over here. What do we know of the segments? Now, these are what? These are actually tickets, right? Not segments. These are tickets booked over here. Let's start with this. Segment CD had an occupancy factor of 95%. Okay, so what are the segments available over here? I have an A to B, right? And then I have a BC, right? Segment, a BC. Then I have a CD, and then I have a DE, right? So remember that. Be careful with that. What's given over here? CD had an occupancy factor of 95%. So 95% is what? 95% of 200. You can compute 19 by 20 into 200, and that's going to come to 190, right? So 190 were there in the CD category, right? CD over here was a total of 190, right? So 190 is what you had over here. Fine. Then what about the rest? Only segment BC had a higher occupancy factor. BC had something more than 190. Now, what can that be? Can you have any value possible? In fact, the last clue over here tells me that the number of tickets booked for any segment was a multiple of 10. So all these segments over here, they're all multiples of 10. And if BC had something which was more than CD, it should have been 200 and no other way out. So 6 I'm done with, and 1 I'm done with, right? So I have just 4 clues left, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now 2 over here is telling me what? Exactly 40 tickets were booked from B to C. Now from B to C, I had exactly 40 tickets. Okay, good. And 30 tickets were booked from B to E. B to E, 30 tickets. Oh, these are direct clues, right? Okay, nice. Among the seats reserved on segment DE, okay, DE, exactly 4/7 were from stations before C. Okay, 4/10 were from stations before C. I really can't work with clue number 3 right now. Let's move on. Number of tickets booked from A to C was equal to that booked from A to E. A to C is equal to A to E. Okay, and it was higher than that from B to E. So this is A and this is A, and what can I say? A is greater than 30, right? Where do I write that? I'll just write it as a clue over here. A is greater than 30. Let's remember that. Yeah, let's remember that. Let's not forget that. And that is pertaining to clue number 4 over here. Done. No tickets were booked from A to B, from B to D, and from D to E. Okay, that's going to be 0. A to B is going to be 0. Very good. B to D, B to D, that's going to be a 0 as well. And then D to E, D to E, that is a 0 as well. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, what else am I left with? I'm left with among the seats reserved on segment DE, 4/7 of this, 4 by 7 into this is going to be exactly 4/7 were from stations before C. Before C. Now, how do I make meaning out of this? Right? Who are the people who are going to be traveling in these segments? Let's try to understand that first. Who's going to be traveling in the AB segment? Now, anybody traveling the AB segment would have started on or before A and would have traveled to B or after B. Think about it. Right? Your to station should be B or after that, and your from station should be A or before it. So if you just write that down, let's see, A to B, C, D, or E. Now, what about the BC segment? You started in A or B and you ended at C, D, or E. Any of these. A to E, you cross the BC. A to D, you're crossing the BC. A to C, definitely you're crossing BC. Likewise for the other 3 as well. Now, if you write this down, it just is going to become so much more easier, right? You should be able to solve this a lot easily, right? So now what do? What is given over here? 200 and 190. Can I make use of it in any way? A to B to C, D, E. You can be from A or B and going to C, D, or E. That's going to be this entire rectangle. This over here is going to add up to 200. I don't have some values. Okay. Next, ABC to DE. ABC to DE. Right. So that's going to be this rectangle over here. Right. From ABC to DE. That is going to add up to 190. I don't have some values over there, quite a few values. What about this? ABCD to E. From ABCD to just E and nothing else, right? Your final is to E only that strip. Now this over here is going to add up to how much? I don't know. This I don't know is what, right? That's the total over here. We don't know what it is, but what I do know over here is this particular clue 3 is giving me some 4/7. 4 by 7 of this, 4 by 7 into this, and this is a multiple of 10. 4 by 7 into this were from stations before this, and there is some condition over here, A is greater than 30. That's it. With that, we should be able to conclude. Now, what are the 7 multiples, right, which are also 10 multiples? So 70 multiples available. We have 70 or 140, right? Just 2 of them. What is 4 by 7 of this? 40. What is 4 by 7 of 140? That's going to be 80. Now, what are we told over here? This 40 and 80 are supposed to be what? Those which were booked. Those which were booked over here, which was um, were from stations before C. Before C, what is there? A and B. So this 40 or 80 is nothing but A to E plus B to E. It's supposed to be 40 or 80. If A to E plus B to E, if this is going to be totaling up to 40, then this is going to be 10. If it's going to be totaling up to 80, then this is going to be 50. Now what are we told over here? We are told that A is going to be greater than 30. If A is going to be greater than 30, how is that possible? That's only if this is 50. That's it. Only 50 is possible over here. We can fill that up, right? So only 50 is possible, which means 80 is what it is. The segment is 140 in total. If if this entire thing is supposed to be 140 in total, 50 plus 30 is 80, we are left with a 60 over here. That's it. If this is 50, this becomes 50. Now let's look at this. I'll just get rid of the strip. It's not required anymore. Should be able to look at it without, because we have to draw the next one. 200 and 190. 200 is what? A to B to C, D, E. From AB to C, D, E. That's going to be this one. And that's supposed to be how much? AB to C, D, E is 200. So if this is totaling to 200, you have 100 and 70. I'm left with 30 more, and that should be here, right? So that should be here. And ABC to DE. From ABC to DE, that's going to be this. That's 60 plus 60, 120 plus 50, 170. 170 plus what is 190? 170 plus 20 is 190. With that, we have filled up this table. Now we should be able to solve these questions quickly, right? What was the occupancy factor from for segment DE, right? DE segment over here was 140. 140 out of 200, right? So 140 out of a total of 200 into 100%, right? We don't need to do all these. 140 by 2 is simply going to give us 70%. How many tickets were booked from station A to E? A to E, that's 50. That's it, direct from the table. How many tickets were booked from station C? From C, I'm starting from C, both 20 plus 60. 20 plus 60, that's going to be 80. What is the difference between the number of tickets booked to station C? 2, right? To station C is 50 plus 40 is 90. And the number of stations booked to station D, okay, 30 plus 20 is 50. What is the difference between these two? 90 minus 50 is 40. How many tickets were booked to travel in exactly one segment? Only one segment means A to B or B to C, like that. A to B is 0, B to C is 40, it's just this diagonal over here, and finally D to E. You add these four, you're going to get 40 plus 20, which is 60.